So this is my workflow for making things on my plasma cutter using Inkscape and GoFab CNC. As an example, I'm just going to use a hippo. There's a town near here called Hutto, and hippos are their mascot, so I'm going to make a hippo that has the word that has Hutto in it. So start off with a Google search for hippo silhouette. Do an image search, and I like to stay compliant with people's licenses, but I don't like to pay for clip art, so I usually try to keep it limited to things that are public domain, labeled for reuse. This one will work. Check the website it's listed on to make sure that it is, in fact, public domain. There it is, CC0 public domain. Go ahead and download that. Copy that to a folder that I set up for this tutorial on my Google Drive. And get to Inkscape. Oh, but before I get to Inkscape, actually need to close that. So now that we have our image, we need a font. I usually get my fonts from defont.com. And for this one, I want it to be kind of cartoony, so the style will say cartoon. Again, to keep things free, make sure that's public domain or 100% free. And we want it to say Hutto. That's kind of cool. Let's go with that one. So download that. Comes in a zip. It's TTF. Usually you can just double click on these and they'll install here. Alright, now open Inkscape. The font won't show up in Inkscape until after you've installed it and restarted Inkscape. And after you install a new font, it takes Inkscape a little longer to start up. A lot longer to start up. And I always start off with a empty table template. I'll put a link in the description to this SVG file, but it has the plasma cutter and the orientation points set up and calibrated already, so all the G-code exports will be the right scale. So I'll save this as to my tutorial folder. Alright. Easiest way to import the picture is just drag and drop. Leave all these default. There that is. So I control mouse scroll up to zoom in. And this is a JPEG. We need it to be a vector. So go to Path, Trace Bitmap. There's some options here. Check live preview and you'll get an idea of what the result's going to be. That looks close enough. These settings are pretty useful for cleaning up vectors that aren't clean. You can play with them, see what they do. The easiest way to preview is to click OK and then grab the vector, and there you can see the points. You can also change your display mode to outline and you'll see exactly what the vector is doing, or change the color and you can zoom in and see how it follows the pixels. but you just get a pretty clean, very close vector right off the bat without having to change anything. Okay, so now I've got my vector, deleted the JPEG, don't need it anymore. I think I want this guy to be facing the other way, so I'm going to hit H, which flips around flips horizontally, B flips vertically. And let's get the text. So the text box tool is over here. We want to bring up the font that we downloaded, which was called Mario, I thought. Super Mario 256, sure. So I think what I want to do is put a circle in here and put these letters inside the circle. So first thing I'm going to do is cut out a circle from this hippo. I probably want it to follow the outline of the hippo a little bit. So I'm going to copy this vector and then line it back up with itself. Change the color so I can see it. And use the path inset button. And path inset, that's Control open paren as the shortcut key for that. So I'm just going to hit that over and over again until I get a shape that's about what I want. Clean that up a little bit. Remove these nodes. Shape that about how I want. Move that a little bit. See, don't need those. So I'm just dragging these around with left click drag, highlighting and deleting. Probably don't need that one. These can move over here. Just sort of sculpt it and push it around until it's about like what you want. And yeah, you can spend a lot of time trying to get things just right, but we'll call that good enough for tutorial. So now this is on top of the text. I want it to be below the text so I can see the text. So I'm going to hit page down, which is a shortcut key for object lower, which controls what order it draws the layers in. So on this one, I want it to keep its same, I want to scale it, but I want it to stay, I want to scale the x-axis and y-axis at the same time, proportionally. So I'm going to click this padlock right here, which locks scale. So now when I scale it, no matter where I move the mouse, it stays the same ratio. Or if I didn't click that, then I could get some really flat looking or tall looking text, which is not what I want. So I'm going to undo that. Redo. Just position this right around here. All right, that's probably a good size to start fitting this in. And so the text, now I'm going to start moving the letters around to touch them together so they don't fall apart when it gets cut out. For that, I'm going to do path, object to path, which will convert the text to a vector. So now this is no longer text, it's a vector. And it's been split up into multiple objects. So now I can take this U and I'll move it down so it's touching this. Zoom in a little bit. Take this H and move it over here. Take this T see, I don't want to hook the T onto the U. That'll work. Hook this T onto that T. Hook this O there. And then I'll grab this point to sort of move it up here so it's touching right there. All right. So that'll probably work. There are a bunch of different ways you can go through and combine the different vectors into one vector so it gets cut out as one shape. Because if you look at the outline of this right now, like there's this line we don't want cut, there's this line we don't want cut, we just want all of this to be one shape. The easiest way to do that, if you don't care about keeping all the precision, is to, let's go back to normal mode, is to make the part that you want cut out, the part that you want to be steel, to be all the same color. So once they're all the same color, you grab the paint bucket tool, which is over here, and just paint bucket anywhere in there. And then this is one big vector. And that's exactly the shape that'll be cut out. Now, if you care very much about precision and you want to keep the vector exactly as it is, because that method actually does a raster fill. Let me delete this and I'll show you what the issue is exactly. Paint bucket, so I'll zoom in. It's the paint bucket tool again. Make the new one gray. You can see, or sorry, black. You can see these little red lines. So there's a little bit of error when you use the paint bucket tool. If you care about that error, then you need to use the vector combine tools. So union, difference, intersection. These let you combine different paths into one path. So split this back up into a different color again. So if I want to add this H to this hippo, then, well, actually first I have to cut out the hole. So I want to cut this hole out from the hippo. So I do path, I select them both and say path difference. And now that's been cut out. So now I just have this one path. Now I want to do the same thing for the H, but I don't want to cut it out from that. I want to add it to, so that's a union. Same thing with the U, and I'm going to start using Control plus instead of clicking on that. Control plus there, Control plus there. Click, click. And I'm using Shift click to select multiple items, and I'm using double click to get past this grouping. Okay, so that should be one path. So that's ready to be cut out. So next step is to convert that to G-code. Before you get too much further, make sure to save. So I just hit Control S, which is the shortcut for file save. The scale of the G-code that's spit out is controlled by these orientation points. I have these calibrated so that they line up exactly with 48 inches on my canvas, which means if I set this to be whatever size I tell Inkscape to make this hippo is going to be the size that it is when it's cut out in G-code. Right now it's set to be 18 by 8, which is a little big. I'll probably just make that 6 across, and since I have this padlock checked, it automatically made it 3 inches high. But that's 3 inches high is a little small. I'll probably lose detail on those teeth. So let's make it 4 inches high. All right, and I usually move things to the origin, so I'm just gonna, this is the X position box and the Y position box. So I'm gonna put it at 0, 0. And that'll make it so when I open it in GoFab, um, the the spot that I'll want to 0 to will be right here. So this will show up right in the corner of the crosshairs in the GoFab app. So to export to GCode, you do the extensions, GCode tools, path to GCode. Under preferences, you put in the file that you want to output to. So I'm just going to copy and paste the path from here. I'm going to call this tutorial.gc. The most important setting here is the bi-arc interpolation distance, which is basically how much error you'll let the G-code generator put into the conversion from the vector to G-code. So click apply. And it's important when you do this that the path that you want cut out be selected. So after you click apply, it makes all these arrows. These arrows show you what direction it's going to cut in. They don't really matter if you're going to be using cut styles on the tablet. I'll show you that in a minute. But it's a good way to sanity check, okay, this is what it thinks it's going to cut out. But I always just select it and delete it right after running generate G-code, and then save my file again. So that should have generated this NGC file. So now I'll open this on the tablet and I'll show you how to use cut styles to add pierce points and offsets. So I'm just going to go ahead and open that file. Oh, right. Sometimes files on your file stream don't show up right away. So if a file on your Google Drive doesn't show up in the GoFab app, sometimes you have to open it in Drive, and the Drive app first. So once you see it in the Drive app, then you know it's available. It's just some weird bug with the way Google Drive works on Android. It caches what files you have available. And so unless you use the Drive app to look at the file before you load it in an Android app, then it doesn't refresh your cache. Okay, so now I've got that file opened. Okay, so now if we told it to cut out just like this, you'd be able to see pierce points on the edges. You can see where it's going to be adding pierce points. We've got 3 of them. And the cut width also isn't taken into account, so you're going to lose some detail on the teeth. So what I'm going to do is add pierce points and offsets using the cut styles feature, which is this button up here. So you click that and you say that you want pierce points and you want offsets, which is going to offset the cut a little bit depending on your cut size. That's what kerf is the thickness of your cut. I'm cutting out of, you can change this to whatever number you want. It's in millimeters. 1.5 millimeters is usually fine for anything up to 1/4 inch plate. For 3/8 plate, I usually use 2 millimeters. So I'm going to optimize the cut order. Is going to make sure that it cuts the inside items first, and then it cuts the outside item last. Reverse offset side is useful if you already have a part cut out and you just want to cut an extra hole in it. That'll flip which side of the path it puts the pierce point and the offset on. So close, and it should add that. Yep, so the white line now is where it's actually going to cut, and if I zoom in here, you'll be able to see it's added an arc in, so it'll arc in here and start cutting. it'll arc in there and start cutting. And on the inside of the O, it couldn't quite get the arc perfect, but it should be better than starting right on the edge. There's just not enough space in there. Now, one thing you can do, if you see something like that and you want to fix it, or try to fix it, sometimes on things that have just sharp corners everywhere, it can only add a pierce point where there's a G-code command already existing. It's not smart enough yet to split the path. So you can take your path and see here, that's probably what happened here. It can only add a pierce point at a corner. Well, maybe you want to go ahead and arc end to the side. So just select these, and up here there's a button, Insert New Nodes. So click that, and it'll add some points. I'm going to go ahead and re-export this. It's G-code. And since I'm using Drive, like I was saying, there's that bug with Drive where it won't show up until you make sure it shows up in the Drive app. So I'm just going to refresh that and make sure that your tutorial 002 shows up. And there it is. Then go back to the GoFab app, open the new version, it's tutorial 002, and generate cut styles again. Now we'll take another look at that O. That's better. Now it's got it starting right in the middle, and it'll come in right on the side and come back out. Perfect. Okay, so I just noticed that here the offset path is stopped there. It's not cutting in here. It's because this gap is too small to actually keep that offset without cutting into part of the part that you want to cut out, and it's not smart enough to just join these two and make a little loop right here. Now, a couple ways you can fix that. If you don't care about losing a little detail, the easiest way is to just make your cut width a little smaller, which will add a little bit of error to the part, but we'll let it squeeze in there. If you want to fix it in Inkscape, one of the things I like to do to visualize where that might happen is select the path that you want, and the fill and stroke, which is you go to Object, Fill and Stroke, you can actually draw an outline as a stroke. So there's that outline being drawn, and you can give that stroke a width. So I'm going to give that stroke a width in millimeters of 1.5. And there you can see, well, that's clearly a problem. You can also change the order. By default, it puts the stroke on top of the path. I think it's easier to look at if you put the stroke below the path. Or you can make it transparent and leave it on top of the path and see both. But now I want to move this just enough so that there's a gap. go back to the tablet, refresh and drive. So now I see tutorial 3, open, tutorial 3, put my curve size back to 1.5. Oops, wrong button. And there you go. So it'll keep the detail that I want in the teeth. It'll cut in that little spot right there. So that's pretty much the process I use for everything with Inkscape and GoFab. So there you go. And if I was wanting to actually cut this out at this point, and I was hooked up to my cutter, then there would be the play button down here, and I just click that and click cut. That's all there is to it. I'll put a link in the description to the GoFab CNC update page so you can get the latest tablet software, and I'll put a link to the empty table 48 by 96 SVG file that I started out with. Take it easy.